Welcome to Cyberhuman Frontiers, one and all. Things are changing big time in a big way, and it's happening fast. We always have to do this. We need to try to kind of pull things together and show people how all of the pieces fit and how they work together. We're going to do a little bit of that tonight. BrainQ, what is that anyway? Anybody know what that is? How that dovetails with artificial intelligence, material science advances in things like graphene and more. Before we get into that, let's just get our community guidelines and disclaimers out of the way. The points of view and purpose here is not to incite fear, violence, or harass or bully in any way, but rather to share opinions and thoughts with other like-minded individuals curious about the subject to encourage conversation and awareness. Our videos do not claim to give medical, legal, political, or financial advice. We offer them solely for your entertainment. From time to time, we may feature works from other creators, certain copyrighted works that were not specifically authorized to be used here, but which we believe in good faith are protected by federal law and the fair use doctrine for one or more of the reasons noted in the Copyright Act of 1976. You should know we always try to put links in our show notes below our presentation, which tell you where we got what we found, so that you can go look it up and carry on further. You're, I'm sure, well aware now that when you start with one article, one section, you're going to find a hyperlink to something else and another link and another link. And before you know it, you can really learn some things that we may not have even known about them, but you'll find out. We encourage you to include those thoughts and those findings in your comments to us. We encourage you to subscribe to the channel and tell your friends if you like what we cover here and if you find it fascinating and engaging like we do, which is why we do it. Again, people, things are happening very fast. Does that cover it? Maybe. Okay. BrainQ. Anybody know what it is? I have a little article, a video. And TMC, by the way, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Hi, Andy.
Hey.
How you been?
Hey, I'm all right. It's good to hear you. Maybe I'll see you one of these days.
One day.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, so check this out. This is from BrainQ Technologies.
The story of BrainQ started about 20 years ago when my son Leo was born with a rare neurological disorder called familial dysautonomia. After he was born and was diagnosed, I started to look for a way to cure him because there's no known cure for this problem. The idea started as many fractions of ideas and assumptions and researchers. Each one looked at it from a different angle.
You know what? There are subtitles here. This gentleman has a bit of an accent, and it's not him, but I think the audio quality is not quite as good as it is. So I got these little subtitles. I would almost be inclined to try to slow it down, but I don't think we'll do that. I'm going to back it up just a little bit. Not quite that far. Right about here. And let's see if those subtitles help us all.
20 years ago, when my son Leo was born with a rare neurological disorder called familial dysautonomia. After he was born and was diagnosed, I started to look for a way to cure him because there's no known cure for this problem. The idea started as many fractions of ideas and assumptions and researchers. Each one looked at it from a different angle. Each one connected to something different, but nobody really connected all of them into one whole picture. But the picture had many, many gaps and holes in it because nobody really looked at the whole picture as one thing.
הציור בעצם מספר סיפור דרך צורה, מהצורה הבסיסית, המולקולה שהולכת ומתגבשת, מתעבה והופכת לרשת נוירונים, סינפסות, משם למעגלים חשמליים, מהביולוגי לטכנולוגי, לטבעי. יש פה איזה מין עץ, אלמוג, רשת.
You know what I think I'm going to do? I think I'm going to narrate this because I don't actually know what language he's speaking. So that might help facilitate this a little bit for us.
He's probably speaking what they speak in Israel.
Yeah, the statements, as I read the subtitles, really are pretty good. So I think I'm just going to slow it down and
Slow it down and mute it.
Many gaps and holes in it because nobody really looked at the whole picture as one thing.
Okay, the painting tells a story through shape, from the basic shape, the molecule that takes shape and condenses, that transforms into a neural network. Synapses go into electrical circuits, yes. From the biological to the technological, yes, absolutely. To the natural world, yes, bridging that gap. To some kind of tree or coral, which is actually a representation of our nervous system. And finally, from nature and biology to man. Waiting for another subtitle here. And let's see what language we're talking.
BrainQ's mission is to restore patients' lives following neuro disorders, getting them back on their feet, literally regaining their sense of independence, taking all these small building blocks and really recreating a new future for all these patients and their families. Very much like we've done here in BrainQ, taking a multidisciplinary team, flourishing it together, and already creating a real impact. We hope that in the next decade, we will reach every single patient and his family and really make it a new gold standard treatment for neuro disorders.
רציתי להביא את האיכויות האלה של השילוב בין המחקר.
Indy, pause.
Yeah.
Hang on. We got to go back to what that guy said. He said it's going to reach out to every patient in the next 10 years and their families. And we need to understand what patient means. And when you start looking at World Health Organization and local, meaning America, standards for neurodegenerative disorders and other types of neuro disorders, everybody has one. So if this becomes a patient-family relationship, that means that this will potentially impact every human on the planet.
Exactly. This is big stuff.
There's more. So earlier on, the painter, the first go-around when you were narrating, was indicating something about self-assembling stuff in the body, and that ultimately forming new synapses and different neural connections, and that transitioned into the guy speaking English, who is a spokesperson for this company, a founder, who began to explain how recovery of paralysis and other types of neurodegenerative disorders is possible with this kind of technology. And when you think about how the brain is wired to the body, when you think about that, as we dive into this technology, I want you to understand at a fundamental level that the hardware and the software is already deployed. What this company is an AI software-based, cloud-based company. There's another video we can watch if you haven't found it that's posted on humaninternet.org, where the same gentleman talking about being able to restore paralysis was making these similar types of statements. So off we go.
Okay. Yeah. If you take a look at this little video production, it's really kind of nifty the way they're doing the spray painting, but the words that they're speaking and the areas that they're tapping into and what they're explaining. Okay, right here, electromagnetic fields. So they're hitting all the main buttons, and the presentation is really rather artful. But that should not distract us from paying attention to what they're speaking about.
We should go back a little bit because they're starting to talk about the electromagnetic fields. And when we get into the patents, what I'm going to show you is that this stuff can be embedded in your walls, and it can be embedded in tables and couches and on things like watches and cell phones and Wi-Fi routers and all that other stuff. When we start looking at the finer nuances of wave interference and interfering beat frequencies with electromagnetic waves. We need to read these because they're talking about merging man and machine. They're literally saying the merger of biology and technology. They're talking about transhumanism. This is the cutting edge, folks. This company was offered startup money, took startup money from Google, and was courting with IBM. major infrastructure, major cloud, major banking, major power player institutions. These are institutions, folks. Google is an institution, just like Facebook, just like all the rest of them. They are their own monolithic, multinational institutions. And once we get our minds wrapped around the fact that we have institutions that are not beholden to one single country, we can then, as a global population, start to extract all of the cancer.
Yep. I'm going to take this phrase by phrase. You won't hear any of their audio. We're just going to let each piece of this sink in. So just to refresh, we're talking about BrainQ, what it is, what the inception of it was. The idea started as many fractions of ideas and assumptions and researches, various institutions, of course, and people, individual investigators, each one looking at things from a different angle. Each one connected to something different. And by connected to something different, that might be people who are actually getting experience with people that have neurological malfunctions that are on the front line of healthcare delivery. It could be people working in a research lab, playing literally with mouse brains and dissecting them while they're still in vivo, and doing exams on those things and seeing what outside effects they can create on those neurological functions. Many different disciplines coming together, and that's not even the half of it. There's more. So next little subtitle here. Each one, nobody really connecting all of them yet. But BrainQ as one concept of bringing all of these things together into one multidisciplinary, high-powered approach. Then we go on further into the whole picture. But the picture had many gaps and holes in it. In other words, it needed some sort of overall overarching organization in order to get the full benefit of all of these research advances taking places independently. Really needed to be brought together. If indeed the target was neurological tissue and behavior modification. Yes, go ahead.
Indeed. This company is, or has been chosen based on your perception, a company that is going to be thrust out into the public space that will bring into the commercial space the idea of rehabilitation with complex directed energy systems. And so what this company is going to do is scrape the internet using AI. They are an AI cloud-based company that will use electromagnetics to modulate the nervous system and the brain in order to regrow nerves and reform and reshape neural pathways. This company will scrape the internet for all of the information relevant to the way the body converts directed energy. Now, when this company is able to get this type of information, it will be able to use electromagnetics as a primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary, whatever type system, so that it provides communications to the local devices, so the local devices can begin modulating their own electromagnetic fields. They can begin modulating their own sound. They can begin modulating their own light. They can then link up all their microphones and all their proximity sensors and everything else and begin to deliver complex, low energy, legal, based on current standards, because AI has not been factored in with organizations like the FCC, gentle directed energy in a variety of forms that consist, again, of sound waves, light, and other variations of light, what we understand as microwave and millimeter wave. When you couple these things together, you get a legal system under today's standards that is able to gently, over a period of time, modulate the brain and the nervous system to correct things like paralysis, or to do things like get the entire third grade class to think a certain way about slavery.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be paralysis. It can be behavior modification. It could be anything. Once you've gotten into that neurological territory of brains, you specify kids' brains. Sure, absolutely.
Well, Apple has a program, and they've had it since I was in elementary school, where they offer discounted rates for education. And what that did was offer a toehold to Apple, whereby allowing Microsoft and IBM to take over the corporate space. Apple went the education art space. And now Apple, because of that, has developed a variety of entertainment applications that cross-apply to learning. Now, when you think about an iPad per child, and you think about 30 children in a classroom, how many antennas, how many microphones, how many speakers, how many pulsed laser arrays, how many flickering screens, how much remote brainwave monitoring and manipulation can occur with 30 iPads, plus all of the support infrastructure, meaning multiple access points per classroom.
See this one I got up right now, TMC? We can hit this one next if you'd like to finish that. Yeah, it seems like it might fit in right now. Okay, so this is coming from the Wall Street Journal. Title of this, How China is Using Artificial Intelligence in Classrooms, which is plays exactly into the point that you were just trying to make. Let me roll this. It's not that long.
Teachers at this primary school in China know exactly when someone isn't paying attention. These headbands measure each student's level of concentration. The information is then directly sent to the teacher's computer and to parents. China has big plans to become a global leader in artificial intelligence. It has enabled a cashless economy where people make purchases with their faces. A giant network of surveillance cameras with facial recognition helps police monitor citizens. Meanwhile, some schools offer glimpses of what the future of high-tech education in the country might look like.
TMC, you want me to pause this just for a minute while we just expound or fast forward a little bit to what we know and what we've covered a little bit of today's current state of the art with this, or should we just let it roll?
I think at this point we should note the Chinese social credit score, this idea of cameras and biometric tracking, and this idea of a universal global passport. And under that framework, I think we should continue to watch this video.
Okay. This is all of our world here, and it's changing shape under our feet, silently almost, it seems.
Good job. Classrooms have robots that analyze students' health and engagement levels.
Health and engagement levels. Okay.
Students wear uniforms with chips that track their locations. There are even surveillance cameras that monitor.
Okay, 2 years ago, the chip was in the uniform.
How often students check their phones or yawn during classes. These gadgets have alarmed Chinese netizens. But schools say it wasn't hard for them getting parental consent to enroll kids into what is one of the world's largest experiments in AI education. A program that's supposed...
Wait a minute. If this is the school saying it wasn't hard enough to get the parents to allow their children to be engaged in this. This is in China. What power do you think that a parent feels like they have over what happens to their child in that sociological and political situation?
This environment enables something like the deployment of AI and brain monitoring of children to do something like have the school administration, be it a teacher or some other administration, like some type of a social behavior expert, if you will.
Yeah.
Politburo kind of thing, where we have them here. They're school counselors and therapists and all that. They report on a whole nother type of psychological and sociological or from another type of psychological or sociological perspective. Now, when you take the notion that AI can replace one human and basically allow for omnipresence to occur, and you're deploying it to the child's brain, what it allows for over a period of time is to understand how the household functions in a variety of ways. Is the child doing what the child has been instructed to do at school over what the parents say? And it will start at the elementary level. And by the time they get into, junior high and high school level education, they will be adequately conditioned to take instructions from somebody other than their parents, which is the same thing that some of our liberal or more liberal politicians have said, whereby We need to rethink the way we view our children, understand that they don't necessarily belong to a single family, but in fact belong to the larger community, and then construct society in such a way so that the larger community has a higher authority, just like in this example with China and the school providing a higher authority to a child than their own parent. And that is where this is going.
You know what you need, TMC? Rather than these uniforms that allow the monitoring and interaction, really, that's not good. I'm being a devil's advocate here, all right? That's not good. So what you really need, because you can just take the uniform off, what you really need is no escape. You need it to be on board in the human. It's got to be there so that it's always on. It's always monitored.
And that's where the BrainQ and the graphene and the magnetic prions and all of the nano circuitry with Charles Lieber and Gang Chen with the Department of Energy and DARPA working on thermodynamic exchange with solar cell technologies at the nanoscale. And this was done at the Soldiers Institute for Nanotechnologies that is funded by the Department of the Army and partners with MIT's MITRE group and others. So we have two individuals. Go ahead.
Well, so just briefly, so where this is heading is it's moving from, if you will, a prototype, which is a uniform that has all of the necessary technology, to being something on board. But then, keep your eyes open, because what if this type of deployment starts making itself known here in the United States or wherever you might be living, whoever's listening to
Well,
us.
it actually is. I saw something on Twitter today that came from the Office of Naval Intelligence that advised all active duty and reserve, as well as retirees and civilians, that it is completely inappropriate to condemn or criticize any high-level federal official, and they listed people like the president, the vice president, et cetera, et cetera. And if the Office of Naval Intelligence is publishing this and citing civilian and retirees from the military, meaning veterans, the next logical step is to start holding these individuals accountable.
Yes.
This is the way that they metaphysically say, hey, look, you've been put on notice, and if you don't comply, we metaphysically are okay. And this is where they violate. They have violated the metaphysical requirements if they want to play that stupid game, because the entire paradigm is a lie. So you cannot tell people the truth when the entire paradigm is a lie. And that's why they will lose.
I see a real problem with this. I don't know why people are so compliant. You see what Zhang Jiao, Jim Jiao, oh gosh, I'm terrible with Chinese. Jiao. Is that, she says, if it's for our country's research and development, I don't think it's a problem. Oh, to hook her I don't know if she's a parent. I think it could be a problem, Zhang. I think it could be a problem. I respectfully disagree with you. Anyway, let me back this thing up here. I think I skipped ahead like 20 seconds. Here we are. Okay.
But schools say it wasn't hard for them getting parental consent to enroll kids into what is one of the world's largest experiments in AI education. A program that's supposed to boost students' grades while also feeding powerful algorithms.
I don't know, guys. Do the experiment in China, and then after they've got it sort of working well and perfected, bring it to Great Britain. Bring it to bring it to Nebraska. Bring it to Boston.
Why don't we restate what was just said? Why don't you replay that and let's really break that down, like the last 5 seconds.
Yep.
But schools say it wasn't hard for them getting parental consent to enroll kids into what is one of the world's largest experiments in AI education.
Keep going.
Okay.
Keep going.
A program that's supposed to boost students' grades while also feeding powerful algorithms.
Stop.
Okay.
All right.
Go on.
Boosting grades, powerful algorithms.
Mm-hmm.
What does this look like? This is active, ongoing brain monitoring, and then the introduction of stimuli to boost grades and improve concentration and all of that, while regrooving and reforming a living brain at grade school age, which is where the neuroplasticity is the most active. When you think about the applications of these technologies and the fact that everybody has to work and that people generally send their children to be cared for by somebody else, by 8 months, 18 months, 2-3 years. It really depends on the financial situation and the desire of the parents, whether or not they like each other and their children at that point. That being said, when you think about how the brain is forming at toddler age and through elementary, what you get is very stable, constant, ongoing neuroplasticity that, when studied with AI, can become standardized. Once it's standardized from a top-down Godhead type of an environment, what you can do is create a hologram, so to speak, of a model brain for your child population, and then over a period of time, with those standardized functionalities that AI has been able to pick up,
you're molding the thought patterns of the kids, and it's being done.
Listen, Indy, stop. You are physically changing the physical matter. You are literally rewiring the brain on top of the software piece of the brain, which is what you were getting at. Go ahead.
Yep. No, you're absolutely, you're nailing it. You're right. I mean, but all I'm saying here is in my old school vision of how the minds and the lives and experiences of children are formed, it usually, at least in my old school view, was controlled a lot by the parents. So the parents then would disseminate their desires for what kind of values that they want their children to have, and expect that under the care of the school that those would be fostered and promoted, as well as letting the child become their own individual and explore who they are going to be, while the parents sit back in wonderment and say, wow, I never knew my kid could do this. But when you standardize all of it, and under the guise of improving scholastic performance, also come up with the standard boilerplate system, what you're really doing is you're, in a sense, automating the education process, standardizing it, and basically you're creating a whole lot of minds that are all programmed and built under the guise of getting better scholastic performance to all kind of think the same way. And it's no longer really under the parents' control. I think it's utterly crazy for that lady Zhang. I totally disagree with what she said. Well, if it's for the betterment of our society, then I don't have any problem with it. No, ma'am, you're the parent. You're the parent. This is your child, an extension of you and your husband. Total disagreement with that. Anyway, I could rant, but I'm not going to.
All right. So before I give you back share, I want to kind of put a nice bookend on what we're getting at here. This is where soldiers are going, and this is where China, because this is our example and it is the model for the world, right? This is where they're going. Biologically engineered super soldiers, bionic eyes, brain microchips. France and China create Terminator troops. China and U.S. salute the cyborg soldier. China's testing biologically enhanced super soldiers. CRISPR to create super soldiers. Isn't that what the who's the what a thing is? The Doomaflachi? DARPA is testing implanting chips in soldiers' brains. Genetically modified super soldiers. Defense intelligence warns of AI human hybrid soldiers. Sonic attacks suffered by U.S. diplomats. Brainwashing. Anyway, you can search if you want to look for this in DuckDuckGo, China soldier brain. And you will find all of this, and you can read exactly what is happening to your children at grade school with an Apple iPad, courtesy of Apple and companies like AT&T, who have collected subsidized money from the federal government, who also are responsible as the primary lobbyists for organizations like the FCC and the Department of Education. These are what the tools will be, whether or not you have a choice. So, America.
The choice is going away.
America, you are running out of time.
Just, I think that everybody's sort of grasping what this, the gravity of what this means. I'm going to go back to, I don't know where it is. I'll find it in a second. Okay, I got it. Here it is. I'll put the share back up. Thank you for your patience. All right, we kind of know where it's going. Here we come. Thank you. Playing.
为了就是国家的这个研究呀、发展呀，我觉得是没有问题的。
I look at this lady's face. I mean, I like her. You know, the sense. She seems like a nice person, but way too trusting. But once again, in China, how much latitude does anybody in Chinese society have to buck, you know, the system and what's going on? Anyway, just let it play.
研究呀、发展呀，我觉得是没有问题的。
The government has poured billions of dollars into the project, bringing together tech giants, startups, and schools. We got exclusive access to a primary school a few hours outside of Shanghai. To see firsthand how AI tech is being used in the classroom. For this 5th grade class, the day begins with putting on a brain wave sensing gadget. Students then practice meditating.
So
this is a zeroing.
Man.
This is a net biasing zeroing that's going on in the brain.
Look at what I'm looking at. Whoa. I'm speechless.
It's kind of like putting a weapon sight on a weapons platform, and you got to zero it. That's what's happening right there. So that class is the most efficiently assanguated up into the AI godhead.
Yeah. Zero out the system and synchronize all the minds that are connected to the system first.
No, it's zero out all the brains so that AI is able to form a clean connection independently so that it can learn what the common denominators are so that when stimuli is applied later on or simultaneously, it can be done so that everybody's receiving the same stimuli. The goal is to create fundamental architectures with AI that will, over a period of time at low energy, regroove and reform physically and with the neuroplasticity every human brain on the planet so that they all hail Satan.
Guys, take that headband and envision that disappears, and instead there are graphene or some other form of biocompatible wiring, nano-sized wiring
biocompatible
inside those beautiful little skulls full of mush that are waiting to explore the world and learn how to be their own people, who never will get to be able to do that. This show is for your entertainment only, guys. It's only for entertainment, all right? We want to entertain you. Are you as entertained as I am? Yeah, okay. So imagine that's all internal onboard wiring. You don't need a headband, and it's powered by ambient energy produced by natural biological processes in the body anyway. So it doesn't need batteries. You don't need to plug in. It's not charged up. It's a new system. It is a new infrastructure adjacent to the normal brain neurological circuitry that was there and eventually could take the place of it. Wow. Okay, good. Imagine a warm light glowing between your eyebrows. Okay, sure. Let's go.
So the warm light is a visual indicator for the teacher, which they'll explain in a minute. So the teacher can report and or identify immediately who's not a good little slave. And very quickly, early on in school age, they will understand what the unique dynamics are psychosocially with each individual so that later they'll be selected for things like kicking indoors or going into the Wuhan virology lab and stealing information from people like Charles Lieber.
Welcome everybody in the chat participating with us. Thanks for being here. We hope that it's a rewarding experience for you.
The device is made in China and has 3 electrodes, 2 behind the ears and 1 on the forehead.
Okay, 1 behind each ear, 1 on the forehead. All right, so 3 major concentrations of transceiving.
Okay. So here we go.
Devices.
You have the ability to monitor the visual center of the brain as well as the audio center of the brain. You have 2 points of contact and they set electrodes. So they're probably talking about contact pads. It's likely, right? Yeah, it's likely that we can show this, are able to circumstantially illustrate quite potentially that there are multiple electrodes on each of the pads that they mentioned, the 3 points of contact, so that you get wave interference patterns possible. Now, if they're only claiming at this point that they're able to read, you're still able to read complex wave interference patterns because you are able to do things like utilize a phased array sensing apparatus. So simply for sensing, this is a very complex device that you're seeing. Next, we've addressed the visual and the audio centers. What is in the front of the brain is where the logic, critical thinking, and aggression centers are able to be measured. Now, if we understand that this is only being shown as a measurement-only device, fine. If you are to assume that through measurement, you're driving voltage through that thing and therefore able to generate capacitive fields, which we can also simultaneously illustrate using the Apple platform headphones, what I'm getting at is you're able to do things like drive directed current through the brain, and you have 3 points of contact with potentially multiple electrodes to drive wave interference patterns into the brain, straight into the limbic system, the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, the cerebellum, and begin to map cross-brain connections. If you can do that, once you have that software profile, that company that we were looking at earlier, BrainQ, would be able to utilize that in the cloud and wirelessly connect to graphene or spions or any other type of conductive protein that elicits an electric, magnetic, piezoelectric, or infrared, ultraviolet signal.
If you want background information on this stuff, we've got tons of episodes which go into the detail to your heart's content about this. But right now, the overview is honestly what's the most important thing to grasp. You don't really need to know all the technical. Let's go a little further here. Okay.
Sensors pick up electrical signals sent by the ear. The device is made in China and has 3 electrodes, 2 behind the ears and 1 on the forehead. These sensors pick up electrical signals sent by neurons in the brain. The neural data is then sent in real time to the teacher's computer. So while students are solving math problems, a teacher can quickly find out who's paying attention and who's not.
Okay. So the teacher can pull up the behavioral and activity profile of each student. Of course, I'm certain this is one student, one by one. She can scroll through and take a look at what each one is doing, or look at a group of them and see how, what the average of all of those results is. During this period, this student is a bit distracted. That's what this says right here. And she can see that. She's pointing specifically to what the green line, I think it's green, should be the normal attention span, and she sees that the attention span of that child has dropped. Maybe he or she is thinking about something else, and she can spot that right away. Okay. All right, go on. This is real technology. This was 2 years ago. Okay.
A report is then generated that shows how well the class was paying attention. It even details each student's concentration level at 10-minute intervals. It's then sent to a chat group for parents. The reports are detailed, but whether these devices really work and what they exactly measure isn't as clear.
All right,
what if you were a kid? Did you ever hear about those kids in school? They were the ones that, they didn't go along with too much of what was going on in the class. You ever hear every once in a while about one of those kids that, they flunked every subject they took, and then they became a tremendous inventor or something?
Indy.
That happens sometimes. What?
Indy. Imagine for a moment the social pressure both on the parents and the children when you do things like every 10 minutes send an update in a quintile format. And those of you that are not familiar with that, it means that you have 5 categories that are in intervals of 20%. Now, if you were to classify or categorize a variety of performance metrics in a quintile type of a setup, you would very easily be able to show who was not being a good little commie and who was. And those that were not able to change their behavior fast enough would be the first to no longer get their food rations, or those door kickers that we were talking about. Maybe the high schoolers get some practice.
Mm-hmm. There was a little shot where they showed some sort of a small robot with cameras and perhaps radar on it that was just sort of strolling around the parking lot, scanning the whole environment. Just being a kid, knowing that there's a machine there, watching, looking at everything you do, and maybe even reading at some distance what your physiological state is, just that alone would be enough as a kid to really change their view of life. Totally. Anyway, I forgot where we were. We were here somewhere. Oh, yeah, we were right here. Okay. Oh, back here. There we go.
We were curious if the headbands could actually measure concentration, so one of our reporters tried on the device.
This is a new technology with still fairly little research behind it.
Theodore Zanto is a neuroscientist at the University of California, San Francisco. He was surprised to learn that this tech, called electroencephalography, also known as EEG, is being used in the classroom on children. It's usually used by doctors in hospitals and labs.
EEG is very susceptible to artifacts. And so if you are itchy or just a little fidgety, or the EEG wasn't set up properly so that the electrodes didn't have a good contact, affects the signal.
Despite the chances for...
All he was talking about there was just, that was a reflection of the imperfections of the headband technology. That's why there's a real push to get this stuff inside the skull instead of on the outside, because with those touch pads, they're depending on the positioning and all that, and you can get a lot of noise in the background. It's going to be so much more accurate when you can build. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. When you can build this in.
You're on the right track. And so really it's not really inside the skull. What it really is inside the genetics. And it's going to go like this. So we're looking at the brain because we're looking at these devices. And the bottom line is the brain is tied to everything. So if you can target something like the heart or the liver or the lungs or the spleen or the intestines or the muscular system or the circulatory system, what you're able to do is modulate the brain from the peripheral nervous system. Secondarily, what you do is every time you have a child, they also have those genetics. Now, here's where it gets kind of cool. If you have software in the cloud and you're able to map in a dynamic environment, you're able to dynamically map all of your conductive proteins and all of your connected tissues, what you get is the capability to individually map and identify somebody with their biometrics beyond something like their face. You get it with their DNA, you get it with their musculature movements, you get it with something like subtle autonomic responses that don't even register with something like a wristwatch, but might show up with something like a chemical reaction. Such delicate sensitivities that will pass on to your children.
I'll put the share back up in a second, by the way. Go on, keep going.
I'm done. That's enough. I mean, it's time.
Coming right up. Thank you for your patience. I'm multitasking here, which, we like.
So on that note, there really is no such thing as multitasking. What really happens is switch tasks.
Oh, you're right.
So those individuals that think they're multitasking, you're really not. What you're doing is overloading your brain by moving from one task to the next and then back to another task. And you're reducing your efficiencies because you have to set up and tear down in your brain what you were doing. It's much better to just be patient and make a side note and constantly reprioritize what needs to be done and complete a task as far as possible before you transition. There is no such thing as multitasking.
Guys, he's right. Okay, a couple minutes left to go on this. Look at these beautiful kids.
For false readings, teachers told us the headbands have forced students to become more disciplined.
上课回答我的问题，就是他们的声音会比平常更响亮。
Teachers say the students now pay better attention during class, and that has made them study harder and achieve higher scores.
Well, of course they are, because they're losing their freedom. They're losing their freedom to daydream. They're losing their freedom to be creative, to invent, to think outside the box.
One word.
It's more than one word. How many words do you want to use?
The word is fear.
Mm-hmm.
上课认真听讲，作业做的基本上是全对的。
But not all all students are as enthusiastic.
When we first wore the headband, it felt like it was controlling us. Go back.
Show that.
Good.
Yeah,
good.
show that for a minute, because this is the stimulation piece.
It hurts. It
All
hurts.
right, so here's this about that. All of you that wear AirPods or the iPhone headphones or some new headphone or something, or new shoes, it hurts, right? So you can arguably state that they're complaining that the weight of the device and the comfort of the device is not good. But
it might be more than that. It might be more than that.
When you couple that with the next sentence that will come up on this screen, one has to wonder if electricity is being injected into the organism that we understand as a human, which is really just a wave interference pattern.
Yep.
But not all students are as enthusiastic.
When we first wore the headband, okay, it felt like it was controlling us. Gee, what could be wrong with that?
So here's this about that. You could arguably state...
Parents are okay with this?
No. They don't have a choice. You could arguably state that it felt like it was controlling us because they were under immediate pressure that was otherwise not there, because the 10-minute updates to their parents and the fighting at home and why aren't your grades good and you got to keep up and we need our food, so you have to go to school and be good because we need our food. You could argue that is what they're stating here. Yep. Having said that, you could also argue that you have electricity or some form of an energy conversion occurring.
Yeah, that's the part I want you to get to. That's what I want you to get to, because I'm going to submit to you that some of these kids are actually feeling something in their head that just feels weird.
More sensitive than others. Exactly right. And those that don't understand, you can look up electrosensitivity or people who are sensitive to wireless signals, and that will be a very good similar example to understand what we're saying, where more sensitive brains would feel some of these potential stimuli versus other brains who might be more immune. Conversely, or in addition to that, what you would consider perhaps is those that are more pliable, more suggestible, maybe not more sensitive, but more suggestible, may not have such an aversion to the stimuli, whereby those that are more aggressive, more dominant, and more resistant to the stimuli fight back, and therefore the voltages go up so that it overdrives the natural increase in voltages that are occurring as a resistance mechanism to the stimuli in the first place. And this is where we get into closed feedback loops where...
TMC, if anybody is going to try to justify advancements in technology that looks anything like this for the sake of like curing or helping a neurological disorder, okay, that person's got to be really far gone to want to do something along this line and perfect technology like this for the sake of curing neurological disorders. There have got to be other ways. And that being said, I would like to just state that this video presentation stream does not claim to give medical, legal, political, or financial advice. We offer it solely for your entertainment. You can go on now, or I can play the video. What would you like to do?
Doesn't matter. I mean, if you want to go over the BrainQ patents, we can. If you want to go over the Apple electrode patents, which we haven't done in a while, we can. If you want to look at some directed energy stuff, we can. We could just go to human internet. I don't know. It's up to you. You want to go to human internet?
Why isn't the mouse? Oh, I grabbed the wrong mouse. Well, that was I? Let's see. I couldn't multitask. I had a few other things queued up. I have a little.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I got this thing. How about this? Let me just put this up. We can go back to the last couple minutes of that, but we're at a point where we can go, okay, let's go to the top of this. All right. Here we have a flexible dry encephalogram electrode based on graphene materials. Okay. What are we talking about? If it's graphene, it's probably very small, very thin, perhaps only one atom thick and very, very strong, and conducts electricity and can be built into other or combined with other materials to make it biocompatible. In other words, something that won't be rejected by the body real fast. Okay, here we go. In order to realistically collect EEG signals in complicated environments, Low impedance and flexibility are two crucial characteristics for the EEG electrode. We designed and manufactured, not we, these people, a type of dry EEG electrode based on graphene with a matrix micropyramid structure on the surface. This EEG electrode could not only reduce the contact impedance, what that means is make for better connection, more accurate and more strong connection to get better readings or better outputs to the tissue, but also to improve the stability of the electrode. Furthermore, based on these flexible graphene EEG electrodes, we assembled a system that could monitor human EEG signals in real time. When a tested person was answering the phone or driving while tired, the system could give him appropriate warnings so as to reduce the occurrence of accidents. I am just getting, for your entertainment, I'm just getting so tired of hearing the cell cycle. Whenever the people that come up with a press release about this stuff, they're always doing the selling side. Oh, this is going to help to ameliorate an intractable neurological disorder that there's no other way other than designing and building and incorporating this type of technology into a person's body. When a tested person is driving while tired, the system can give appropriate warnings. Well, there are other ways to handle these things. Get enough sleep the night before. Don't drive when you're too tired. Don't overwork yourself. Just like manage it yourself, handle it yourself. But the more that you depend on technology to handle things that people would previously have done in a self-managing style, then the more dependent that people become on it, and the more of their own freedoms they sacrifice. Okay, the system could give them appropriate warnings so as to reduce the occurrence of accidents. See, there's the cell cycle right there. Oh, how can you say no? It's going to reduce the occurrence of accidents. Doesn't that sound like just a different version of what that parent Zhang said? Well, if it's for the betterment of society, I don't see any problem with it. No, guys. No, you got to think this through. This brain-computer interface system was wearable and suitable for intelligent detection of EEG signals. And what did that come from? You can't see it. Let me put it up here so you can see it. This link is in the show notes. Materials Research Express, IOP Science, a flexible dry encephalogram electrode based on graphene. Now we can go back to the other thing, or wherever you want to go. Where would you like to go, TMC?
I'll take share. Let's browse human internet for people who are serious about trying to figure out at a circumstantial level where we deal with non-classified information. I'll show you a little bit of what you can start with and then where you might want to go should you choose to go there. Can you see my screen, Indy?
It's coming up. It's working on coming up.
Okay.
I think it might be lagging a little. There you go. It's up.
Okay. So this is humaninternet.org. And what you're looking at here is biomachine interfaces in the media section. So if we go to the media section here, start here, and you'll see live broadcasts. This links to our channel, and you have biomachine interfaces. There are other categories here that I have not yet been able to populate. Some have information, some don't. And this is the video section to kind of get a general idea of what it is that is going on behind the scenes. And if this will load, this is the nervous system page, and it is videos from... videos from a doctor or a professor who does a very good job explaining the basics of interacting with electrogenic cells, neurons. Now, if you got that part, then you can start going into looking at something like biomachine interfaces, which is where you get a high-level overview of brain-to-brain communication. 2018 keynote speech from a former DARPA head. Regina Dugan is a former head of DARPA that then went to work for Facebook. And this speech is about the way that Facebook is looking at interacting with the brain for a text-to-speech application. And the example that she uses is the application of ballistic photons using light. Now, when you look at something like an Apple iPhone and the Face ID projecting upwards of 30,000 phased array infrared lasers at your body and your face. And this lady, former DARPA head, in 2018 at a Facebook keynote speech talking about using ballistic photons in the infrared band to read the speech center of your brain, one has to wonder. Now, speaking of DARPA, these are a few speeches from DARPA a few years ago that talk about the vision that DARPA has with respect to brain-computer interfaces. You have the future of neural interfaces, you have brain-machine symbiosis. This gentleman is a research and development head now at a company by the name of Batil. And this guy also worked in the neuroscience department, so to speak, at DARPA. He has a great presentation. This is the original Elon Musk Neuralink. It might be wise to revisit that. And you have this speech, which is also good, organic materials and devices for interfacing with the brain. This is very dry. Now, the next section talks about the fusion of man and machine, another DARPA talk. Doug Weber, brilliant man. He has a few speeches online that he's delivered in a variety of venues that are excellent. And we go on, right? Brain Mind Summit at MIT. You have Thomas Reardon, who is the CEO of Control Labs. He used to work for Microsoft, and at Microsoft, he was a head R&D, and then he went over to New York and started Control Labs. Facebook recently acquired Control Labs and now holds all of the patents for what they call EMG, electromyography. And what that is, and I might be messing that up, but what it is, it's the measurement of the muscles. And this technology from this guy, if you watch this video, talks about putting a band around your forearm and then measuring the neural signals going to your hand. And he gets into the specifics of why it's so important. And it's because there is an excessively greater amount of information that the brain needs to deliver and sense from the hand. Why? It doesn't require as much effort for the brain to move an elbow while performing surgery or painting a Monet or a masterpiece, right, than a hand. A hand requires a lot of information. What this guy talks about and alludes to is being able to read the brain from the wrist. When you couple this with a smartwatch and or the smart bands that a company like Apple has, whereby they build in electrodes into the band, you get the same hardware that then allows the software now owned by Facebook to run wild over Apple's platform. This is ongoing. Here is another Justin Sanchez talk. This is a very good talk. It talks about wearing something that fixes something like paralysis. And if you watch this talk, it will tie into the BrainQ piece if we get that far, because when it goes wireless and you don't need a wearable anymore, they can just inject something into a muscle, have it fused to your nervous system in a paralyzed leg, and turn on the electromagnetics. And all of a sudden you can walk again after you've fallen out of a helicopter. Now, we've seen this one, how to control someone else's arm with your brain. This is Neuro-tech for kids. This is a fun and friendly video. Neural Dust, this guy is from Berkeley, and he is a developer of Neural Dust. And what they use Neural Dust for, they really tested it heavily in Desert Storm and in 2001 when they were toppling Saddam. And what this stuff would do is they would sprinkle it out of airplanes or whatever else, and it would work for a day. So the requirements for the program were to be able to have something run for the duration of time at night, and then have the capacity to be able to charge during the day to be able to run again at night, so that you had 24-hour surveillance with passive sensors. And what that means is these things would emit passive radiation when sensors were looking for them, so that when you had soldiers on the ground with vehicles that were your friendlies, they would be able to have computer systems that would be able to pick up enemy traffic, foot, road, air, you name it. So Neural Dust also functions very well in people, which we'll get to in a minute. Transient bioelectronics. Interesting. And we have implantable, injectable, and wearable devices for affecting neurologic functions. Now, moving to the next section, you have augmenting the brain with AI. Hybrid intelligence coupling AI and the human brain. How can AI become an extension of your mind? MIT. Why you shouldn't upload your brain to a computer. MIT. Could we soon augment our brains? Quantum tunneling. MIT, ambassador to AT&T with their cybernetic. AT&T has a laboratory. They sold Bell Labs. Bell Labs has been passed around like a whore to the rest of the world. It's also known as Lucent. And Lucent used to be in New York at a particular building that we won't necessarily mention. And anyway, so the partnership that this lady has with AT&T really has to do with being an ambassador between MIT and its affiliates and AT&T, so that quantum-based computing technologies can be deployed. Now, when you're dealing with people as smart as this lady and this lady and this gentleman, and you partner these people with organizations like AT&T and the federal government, you get all kinds of interesting stuff that can occur. So that is the beginning of this website. If you get far enough to get through these videos, then you're starting to maybe be able to read. There are many more media sections. Some of them, again, are populated. Some of them are not. And the 5G radar, very interesting graphics there, Wi-Fi and ultra wideband. This is how all of this stuff measures your biometrics, how it transmits, how it uses phased array, beamforming and modulation. Gene editing has not yet been populated. Nanotechnology is a little bare. Bioenergetic medicine is bare. So that being said, let's look at nanotech real quick, and then we'll go to bioenergy interfaces and kind of tie all this together. Nanotech, this talks about self-assembling mRNA and other types of genetic therapeutics with something on a tabletop that you could put in your garage. Bioterrorism is a very, very, very real thing. Having said that, we'll go now to bioenergy interfaces, where we have BrainQ, electromedicine, wearable mobile devices, and nerve stimulation. Some of these are populated more abundantly than others. The wearable mobile devices we'll go to first, and then we'll get into BrainQ. What we have here is something like a watch, a camera, earbuds, and headphones, and antennas. Again, some are more populated than others. This is a work in progress. When we look at earphones, because we were looking at the headbands on those poor little children, what I want to show you is this. You can measure and monitor the brain with capacitive electrodes. Now, these look like this. These capacitive electrodes exist where you have an electrical conductor and then something that is not conductive but is in fact dielectric in between. What that does is allow something like a sleek and sexy form factor, like something like this. And the way that works is this. You have these things vapor deposited and then a layer of dielectric sealant on top. Or you build a conductive hybridized plastic polymer and then put a dielectric coating on the top of it, so you get nice, sleek, and sexy headphones. And what these things can do is measure your brain waves, potentially stimulate your brain. We're functioning in this temporary stimulation. Now, this is how it works. Inside these headphones, this is a partnership between Apple and Beats by Dre. Apple bought Beats by Dre a long, long time ago. You have earbuds that generate electric fields, and these electric fields pass through your skin and your fat and your bone. And these things can generate complex waves, and they're showing you in a very small example here what they do. Do not think for a second that this is as far out as these go. It is frequency specific because of the waveform. A lower frequency has a longer waveform and therefore has greater distance with their near field electromagnetic characteristics. Having said that, capacitive sensing is listed in the patents for these devices to understand things like how the headphone is placed on your head to improve your audio experience and to improve noise cancellation. That is why these are allowed. They also are used to mess with your brain. Now, other examples. This is the cheap version of the Beats by Dre Tour. Beats by Dre Tour. I used to have a pair. And then you have the wireless sports version, which also have conductive members. And what I mean by that is this. These, in fact, are electrodes, and these, in fact, are embedded in the wire that is fashioned and molded behind your ears so that when you try to juke somebody shooting hoops, your headphones don't go flying off. When you start looking at the nerves and the peripheral structures around the ear, you get access to the auricular nerve, the trigomenial nerve, and most importantly, the vagus nerve. Now, in addition to that, you have other facial nerves and cranial nerves that are nearby. Going back to these waves up here, just what frequencies are being used and how far away can they be and still have effective wave interference? Can you modulate the lips and the nose and all of the stuff underneath the front of your face with something like headphones? I don't know. Things that make you go, Moving to the next set of beats by Dre, we have the stylish and ever so cozy studio. And what this illustrates is what we were getting at with our hypothetical postulation with those poor children in China. If you have a single pad, you can have a phased array electrode system and start generating very, very complex wave interference into the brain with these. Every one of these is its own circuit. Every one of these is its own circuit. So how many pads were on those 3 points of contact that we looked at earlier? These are absolutely beautiful headphones. I want to mention here that you have electrodes not only in the screen or behind the screen, but also in the foamy cushion pad. So in fact, those of you that love these headphones, that are wonderful headphones, you have direct stimulation all over the ear, which also when you study biologic acupuncture points that are very familiar in Chinese medicine, you will find that the ear and around the ear basically connects to your entire body. So you have electrodes that can contact and make communication signals with your entire body. And around your ear, you have electrodes as well. Notice that this says number 40. 40 illustrates electrodes. 40 is also pointing to the paddy cushion thing. The paddy cushion thing.
Yep.
The paddy cushion thing. So,
a lot of stuff there.
Now we move to the Bose, and the Bose headphones, those of you that like Bose, also have conductive traces. Here's the patent. These are all linked for those of you that want to look for yourself. So what we have here is headphones from Bose that have conductive traces, the same thing. It's just a different design, but the same hardware is there. And so when you look at companies like Google and Apple and Microsoft and Facebook and Amazon and others, Huawei, you get standard technology that is deployed in mass, whether it be Samsung, Apple, Google, or other, that offer hardware applications to be made available via the cloud, controlled with software and AI, and now we'll go to BrainQ so that you can start to see just how far along we really are.
Yeah.
BrainQ, all of the patents are here, and I didn't share my sound, so if we want to watch these videos, maybe we should. What time is it?
Oh, we got time. We got 45.
All right. Let me stop share real fast and make sure I have the box checked, and we'll watch these videos real fast. They're directly applicable.
I need sound. I think. Could you try the share again and share the sound?
You don't have any sound?
Yeah.
Interesting.
You'll get it.
Yeah, no, I know I checked the box. No, I didn't. My bad. I must have missed it. I'm so sorry. Let's start over.
Okay.
My name is Yotam Drexler. I'm the CEO of BrainQ. an AI-based medical device aimed at getting paralyzed people following neuro disorders like stroke or spinal cord injury back on their feet. Every single year, hundreds of millions of people around the world suffer from neuro disorders. Stroke alone accounts for 15 million people every single year, and the entire neuro disorders cost to the US economy is $1.5 trillion every single year. My grandfather had a stroke several years ago. From being the center of the family, all of a sudden he became paralyzed in half of his body. That means he can no longer do simple things like grabbing a glass of water or dressing alone. And that's the reality for many people out there. The common treatment is what's called physical therapy. It's essentially exercising the hand or the leg back and forth. What BrainQ essentially does is modeling physical therapy and applying it directly to the brain. In a sense, we ask what happens for a patient or for a healthy person when he does an hand movement, like, reaching his hand to grab a glass of water. So we get a lot of people do this kind of movements, and then we learn the patterns. We take these patterns that we have learned and identified and reapply it back to him as a personalized treatment. We have developed a unique brain-computer interface-based medical device that takes patients' brainwaves as an input with a set of metadata and runs machine learning algorithms in the cloud and translate them into a tailored electromagnetic treatment aimed at facilitating their central nerve system recovery process. And we were very fortunate to have Google share this vision with us. We worked very closely with the GCP team on making this vision come true. We were fortunate to be on this program, and it really puts us on a fast track. In all four fronts, we have developed the next generation of technology with precision medicine base, with the studio team, Peter Norwick, and the rest of the Googlers that were very, very keen in helping us. We had a large funding round in the past couple of months, and we had several collaborations in the pipeline, and we are hoping to continue on this promising track and really bring cure to millions of people around the world. And we are fortunate to have Google with us on this journey. My grandfather had a stroke. All of a sudden, half of his body was paralyzed. He could no longer grab this bottle of water, which I brought with me, especially here. He could no longer go to a shower. This was his state, and it remained for the rest of his life. Every single year, hundreds of millions of people suffer from neuro disorders. Motor disabilities following neuro disorders are an imminent need. To give you one number, stroke alone is forecasted to cost the US healthcare economy $240 billion by 2030. But the current solution is quite limited. It's called physical therapy. Many of you know it. It's a tedious, repetitive exercise of the hand or the leg in order to retrieve some of the functionality back. But it's just not good enough. And it's been there for a while. And BrainQ is here to change this equation using data-driven tools. Our mission in BrainQ is to lift paralyzed people out of their wheelchair. And when I say lift them out of the wheelchair, I mean literally being able to walk again or grab this glass of water again. And we do so based on two pillars. One is several decades of brain-computer interface research, and the other is rapid developments in AI tools in the recent years. When coming to approach this unsolvable problem, call it this way, on the whiteboard, we said, why don't we model physical therapy using data tools and apply them directly to patients' brain? Well, what do I mean by model physical therapy? Let's think about the brain as a sophisticated radio, where there are many different radio stations that
work in parallel. And you know, I'm holding this in my hand and I'm thinking about my wife at the very same time. And these are maybe different radio stations. And our goal is to find the right stations which are associated with specific motor functionalities which are now lost. But the problem is that in order to do so, you need to interpret relevant data. And the relevant data, which is called EEG, the brainwaves, is a very noisy data. And you need a lot of good quality data in order to work with it. And this was a non-existent, essentially. So we had to create our own. We are the owners of one of the world's largest BCI motor task databases in the world, which we have created ourselves. And with this data, we've actually created state-of-art machine learning algorithms that can tell what are the radio stations for healthy people when they're grabbing this bottle of water, but also what happens to a patient following a stroke that can no longer hold this glass of water. What are the anomalies in the radio stations? And with that in mind, I'd like to talk a bit about BrainQ 1.0, our device. So as you can see here, this is a patient sitting in the chair. Every single treatment is asked to do certain motor tasks, like grabbing this glass of water. And we are collecting his EEG data and motor data, running it to the cloud, running machine learning algorithms, and retrieving back a tailored electromagnetic treatment. It's important to say that this device is unique in several aspects. First, it's probably one of the first in the world which is a therapeutic machine learning-based device, also a therapeutic cloud-connected device. It's non-invasive, it's patient-friendly, and it's about an hour treatment a day. And we are very fortunate to have IBM sharing with us this vision of digital therapeutics. Right now, the company is in clinical trials in several leading hospitals in Israel and abroad, and I cannot share much at this point, but I do want to give you a flavor of where this is going. What you see on the left-hand side are paralyzed rats following spinal cord injury. And you see that the starting point is, well, the rat was paralyzed, and the spine itself is almost completely cut. And over the course of 2 months treatment, what we've seen is a 0-to-1 effect. Paralyzed rats started to walk again, and you can see the MRI DTI talks for itself, a connectivity in the spine. But I do want to share with you today also some of our results already in human. This result has been just recently published in the World Congress of Neurorehabilitation. What you see here is a guy, a 32-year-old guy, following a very severe accident where he lost all motor and sensor below a certain part of his body. And over the course of 4 months treatment, he regained sensation back to his legs. And look at the MRI results. It talks for itself. And moreover, it somewhat replicates what you've seen on the left-hand side. And I just want to give it to you as a taste that we believe that we are into something very fundamental here. We are very much out of time, and I need to keep it on 4 minutes, apparently. So I will just say that we sit in Jerusalem. We are a 12-people company, well-funded, and we are with, I think, some of the most brilliant people in terms of AI and neuroscience, really all joined on this mission of bringing cure to millions of people around the world. We welcome you to join us or approach us and find a way to collaborate. Thank you.
All right, so here's all the patents, and I want to show you some pictures. I don't know if we're going to have time to get into the words. Maybe we'll parlay this in the next week a little bit. But what I want to show you here is some of the basic diagrams of their 1.0 version. And this was a long time ago, right? 2014. So think about where we're at and what's going on, and think about 2014 with machine learning, and think about all of the things that we just talked about with respect to the electrodes and the brain studying and all that. And this is a medical environment where they can really drill down to some highly, highly sensitive stuff. This is a bed that has a variety of coils around it that then allow segmentation, wave interference, etc. And this is kind of what they look like. And these are coaxial coils. They also mention in the patents that they don't have to be coils. These can be any type of antenna, including a dipole antenna. So inverted F-planar antennas and other types of antennas that are commonly used in cell phones and other miniaturized mobile devices all fall within the hardware parameters that are listed in these patents. Here's one with a chair, and here's one with two coils that are around the head top to bottom. Now imagine a 90-degree rotation with something like a Beats by Dre. Imagine this having 2 points of contact on the back of the head and 1 point of contact on the front of the head like we saw on those poor children. This is where this is going. Here is an example of where this stuff is embedded in the walls. So when we start looking at resonance, when we start looking at scalar, when we start looking at beat interference frequencies, to use the term loosely with electromagnetic waves, what you get are things that potentially are conductive and have their own electromagnetic characteristics. What you get are things like home power lines. What you get are things like metal beams instead of 2x4s. What you get are things like fixtures and other remotely connected things, Wi-Fi routers, televisions, alarm systems, cameras, thermostats. These all offer attachments in a domicile that allow for free movement inside of your apartment or your house. You can move around freely and you get your therapy. This is where this is going. This is why the Internet of Everything includes the power grid. Going back to AT&T in 2018 released all of their waveguide patents as it relates to how they transmit complex, multiplexed communications over power lines. Now, this technology has been around for a very, very, very long time, and I want to reiterate here that AT&T released them, or was authorized to release them, into the public space in 2018, which was approximately 6 months before 5G really, really took off. Now, they waited, in my view, just my opinion, until after June 26, 2018, where it was put into the federal Congress, the 5G Smart Act or something like that. I have to look it up. But basically what it states in that is that 5G is going in, and the general public nor local municipalities have any say whatsoever, to the tune that it is illegal and prosecutable to bring forth anything related to health hazards associated with 5G to any governing body or the FCC. Now, the only stipulation they make is whether or not it's pretty, which means that in areas that are ritzy, right, rich areas, they have a say-so as it relates to whether or not they get an ugly antenna on a telephone pole or they get some nice, pretty little box that blends into the stucco. Nevertheless, 5G is going in, and what it's going to allow for is complex AI mesh networks that, through radio controls and software-defined networks, connect everybody's house so that the knowledge home that we addressed in our human bond communication episode can then be deployed globally. And what that will do is allow something like the power lines in your house to sense where you are and modulate your brain and groove and refashion the hardware and the software that will be what your children have available to them when they grow into adulthood.
Yep. They're using the power lines, or can work to use the power lines to augment the connectivity of the whole system.
The power lines will function as a communication and therapeutic application simply because you have very, very high currents going through. And so what you can do is pulse modulate the circuit going to the light versus the circuit going to your television or your lamp on the floor, and have smart meter understand how to override signals such that when they reflect down the wire and start getting into a resonance, you get standing waves in each of the respective lines. In this case, we're looking at a wall and a ceiling in a room, and you're able to generate complex standing wave interference patterns. And if you do that in brainwave resonance, anywhere between 0 hertz, which is dead, up to what is traditionally understood as 100 or 120 hertz, but in reality is more like 500 and upwards into the kilohertz frequencies. And here's why. When you're dealing with power lines, you can't just turn off and on the power lines any old such way. You'll kill somebody. So what you do is you put frequencies over top that then gently take the amplitude at the crest and the trough of the oscillating 60 hertz or 50 hertz wave, and you can develop harmonics and subharmonics of those harmonics to do things like generate complex resonances. And you can look at something like the Royal Rife machine or other similar types of alternative cancer therapies to understand what I'm saying. And what I'm getting at is this: you can grow or disrupt subcellular function by introducing a resonance of that subcellular function. If you do that and you introduce a known harmonic, typically a harmonic of 10, if you will, a power of 10 or 5 or whatever, everything is unique. And this is where the AI, machine learning software, cloud stuff that BrainQ was talking about comes into play. If you can modulate subcellular functions with the power lines using smart meter technology and waveguide technology, you have potentially technologies that have been deployed covertly being used on the American and other global citizens for a very, 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 very long time. And this is all speculation for your entertainment purposes only. Let's
speculation just for a second. The smart meter is potentially a really powerful piece because that is in the it's in the flow path of the power coming from the outside, as well as having internet connectivity, and is the bridge to the internal wiring of the house. And this is just speculation, but if the power were gated somehow, switched on and off at extremely high frequency by the smart meter, it would not affect the appliances that are running off of the high current power that's coming in. Your washing machine, your dishwasher, all your appliances, they're just looking for 60 cycle AC current. That's what they're built for. But if at the same time that 60 cycle current was delivered, if the smart meter or an associated piece of equipment would be able to gate that power at extremely high frequency, it would then start basically transmitting some sort of additional signal, which could be it could affect physiology.
So here's this about that. Those of you that know what an inverter is, or a converter, I can't remember. You would know more than me, indeed.
Well,
but
inverters turn DC into AC.
Okay, good. That's the one I want.
Doesn't have anything to do with what frequency they're doing it at.
Listen to me. When you measure a sine wave, an AC sine wave from a moderately purchased inverter, you get cutoffs on the top and the bottom of your sine wave. And what I'm getting at is you can run, if you have the right inverter and the right generator, you can run a refrigerator, you can run an oven, you can run an iron, you can run a blow dryer off of an inverter. So to your point, when we're looking at understanding overriding frequencies on the crests and the troughs of a 60 hertz or a 50 hertz wave, it's very easy to circumstantially show that modern appliances will work with the edges or the crests, if you will, top and bottom, cut off, and which means that those are available to pass other signals and other amplifications.
That's right. Potentially, that's correct.
So here's the patent we were looking at, some of the highlights of it: electromagnetic field, right? Used one or both, time varying magnetic fields, right? Using a coil, an antenna, or other conductor. And here's where power lines come into play, folks. Time varying magnetic fields that induce an electric field or current in a material. Now, keep in mind, this is a medical based company dealing with neuroscience and correcting deficiencies with the brain and the nervous system. So material is, for example, a nervous system. They're, in this case, measuring in Gauss. Talks about being able to interact with the region or functionality of a brain, such as the motor functions, memory, or other general functionality. Let's talk about that. Your heartbeat, your respiration, being able to hold your bladder, that kind of stuff. Certain frequencies are unique to each and every one of those things. Now, you can look at a frequency of a nerve fiber, for example, from the bladder up to the intestines, or you can look at a nerve fiber within the bladder and have unique resonance and modulation characteristics. And this again goes back into machine learning and AI. Once you generate common physical infrastructure in the human organism, you can then begin to standardize the stimulation of the organism. If you do this at school age, which is what China is working on for your entertainment purposes only, you will be able to generate standard modulation to grow humans, to create super soldiers. So a frequency may be appropriate to a particular region or functionality of the brain or the nervous system, meaning it could be a particular movement of a limb or a muscle or a particular type of cognitive ability. Are you going to go to sleep? Are you going to stay awake? Are you focused? Are you distracted? Are you in love or are you in a rage? Do you hate yourself or do you love yourself? Did your life end because somebody did something bad, or are you just going to start over? All of these things are a particular type of cognitive ability. Any other type of functionality. Imagine being able to regulate somebody's heart rather than giving them a pacemaker. You just put them in a Wi-Fi field. Medicine has been stolen from the people. Medicine is being deployed around the people so that we generate a two-tiered society, so that those that have can walk freely amongst those that don't have, the have-nots, and take their children. So, a plurality of signals of different frequencies may be concurrently applied, and this is where we get into wave interference and phased array antenna systems. What does that look like? A connected house of today consists of an antenna or a phased array antenna subset in something like a refrigerator, a thermostat, a camera system, your Wi-Fi, your phone, your laptop, your tablet, your headphones, your watch, your television, your car. These all generate a plurality of signals of different frequencies that may be concurrently applied. When you look at this and software-defined radios with the rollout of 5G, what you get is an antenna array that becomes cheap so that it can then be deployed in everything. Consumers will pay for it through the cell phone tablet markets, which will then drive the need to create the manufacturing. Once that has been paid for, everything else gets this stuff as a standard available option where you can't turn it off. Once that happens, you get software-defined 5G, 6G, forward, backward compatible networks that, with AI, offer a plurality of signals of different frequencies that will be concurrently applied to you and your children everywhere all the time for your entertainment purposes only. In this manner, more than one region or functionality may be treated concurrently. So, from a medical perspective, if you're paralyzed from the waist down and you have bladder incontinence, what they're getting at is you will be able to hold your piss and walk at the same time. That's what they're getting at. Time variation of therapeutic fields, electromagnetic fields, may be a superposition of the various applied frequencies. This is where we get into some craziness, because this statement right here ties into potentially quantum networks. Superposition of various applied frequencies, if you consider the human organism as a superposition of various applied frequencies, what they're getting at here is quantum medicine. This is where this company is going. They don't mention that here, but that's what I see when I read this. Field strength may be below 100 Gauss, maybe as low as 5 Gauss. This is incredibly low energy, much lower than what the FCC lists as harmful to humans. And this is why they legislated or proposed to Congress in June 26, 2018. This is why they proposed it being illegal to bring forth any health hazards, because when you start doing research on countries like Russia and other countries within the Soviet Union, what they found in the 70s was that at incredibly low energy, you're able to interact with subcellular functionality. From then until now, we get something like graphene being mandated, otherwise you can't get food, so that you can do things like manage subcellular functionality for your entertainment purposes only. Therapeutic electromagnetic fields can be utilized to selectively exercise muscles, may be applied to cause the nervous system to tighten a particular muscle. Perhaps a heat sensation? Perhaps a flushing of the groin? I wonder what that would feel like. By an amount that does not result in any noticeable movement. So what this means is that you can have therapy applied to you and you wouldn't even know it. I'll read this again. Electromagnetic therapy, constructive and destructive wave interference, a superposition of electromagnetic waves can be applied to interact with your nervous system to tighten a particular muscle. And in this example, by an amount that does not result in a noticeable movement. This may be beneficial for rehabilitation, for weight loss, or for other health or aesthetic purposes. Concurrent applications of fields of different frequencies may enable simultaneous activation of different muscles. When you think of a super soldier and you have a country like China training the brain of elementary school children, imagine augmenting a human whereby they're able to run, jump, fight, think, shoot, move, and communicate with the augmentation of AI. Imagine what sex would feel like with a super soldier. Volume electromagnetic field system is configured to apply therapeutic electromagnetic fields to one or more patients that are within the volume. What this means is that when you're in your house with your family, you get your own therapy and your children get their own therapy. And that, in a nutshell, folks, is how human bond communication works. Go back and watch the episode. This is the medical side that really illustrates how the hardware and the software are going to make Huawei's European Innovation Day 2017 in London a reality. This is a method and a device for enhancing brain activity. Same company, same general hardware, different software application. Coils again are used, and they get into being able to focus on various specific parts. Different graphs, lots and lots of medical gibberish, electromagnetic stimulation, and cell proliferation. That's real interesting. What does that mean? This means we stimulate your brain or your nervous system and we watch the neurons fire and we map what direction they go, how intensely do they fire in all directions, and then reintroduce electromagnetic stimulation to alter its natural state. When you think about a traumatic brain injury, this is a desired application. This is mentioned here in this patent. Furthermore, in this patent, it mentions being able to direct the stem cells that generate from the olfactory center in your brain to other parts of your brain that are damaged, and then deposit those cells and tell them what to be and how to fire. What I am getting at is simply this. As your children go to school and their brains are being formed, these stem cells are also being produced. In addition to the aggressive neuroplasticity, their brains are growing. If you have 30 iPads plus multiple Wi-Fi access points and the power system in a classroom, what you get is a ripe environment to do something like deliver enhancing brain activity, electromagnetic stimulation, and then measure and monitor how the electrical signals proliferate throughout each and every individual brain. And then, through a closed feedback system, deliver electromagnetic stimulation so that the goal being at the end of class, one pulse is the same or has the same response with every child. If you can get an entire classroom to modulate their brains simultaneously, you get a hive mind, AI, communist style system that will deliver all stimuli to the population, rather than using these technologies as an advanced communication system to enhance human activity, communication, construction, destruction, and otherwise. This is the future of warfare. This is the future of how children will learn. Children will be dealing with quantum computers and each other making spaceships and rocket fuel in their garages rather than soapbox cars when they're in their teenage years. This is the potential of a renaissance. The alternative is death. The alternative is the construction of a beast system that, through a country like China and the European Union and NATO, overtaking the free will of the human species for your entertainment purposes only. Let's see what else is in this patent. Here is an idea of a closed loop system. Now, instead of having a coil on the top and bottom of your head, think of headphones on each side. Or think of all of the wireless antennas in your house and the power lines, right? You have supplementary treatment, which indicates a closed feedback loop. You have a measuring mechanism that can understand what should be happening versus what is happening. Therapeutic for medicine or for social conditioning, it doesn't matter. What should be happening versus what is happening is simply a matter of who is driving the AI. Then a treatment decision is made and modulation is applied. Then you get supplementary treatment and recovery based on whether or not you have what is supposed to be happening in alignment with what is happening. A standalone closed loop system available to a community that offers secure cyber encryption in something like a courthouse and a library via a closed loop quantum network that would then connect to a neighboring community would enable things like parents to go to Pop Warner football and help their children jump higher and help their children run faster and tell their children go left, not right, because they're looking where their child is not. And from this type of training, we will build a free volunteer military that is ready to fuse with drone swarms and Air Force armadas that consist of multiple pilots that have 6 other weapon systems that they're controlling with their brain. Think about a fleet of fighter pilots, 6 or 8 fighter pilots that each have 6 or 8 of their own drones that they're flying, all equipped with missiles, bombs, lasers, and directed energy jamming equipment. To augment the human brain at a young age and do things like offer sports so that parents can engage and learn simultaneously enables a country like America to rapidly come online and scale up against a country like China. The vulnerable point that America has at this point is, in my view, the next 5 years. If we don't correct our social situation here, we will lose our asymmetrical advantage because our intellectual property is being stolen and it is ongoing. Once that is corrected, if we are able to go out of our homes because we untuck ourselves, we will be able to do things like offer real, meaningful, legal accountability, top down, and then we meet in the middle. So let's move on to the next patent. We have a few minutes left. This patent, you know what? Let's look at the highlights here. It says here that this patent talks about each region or system in the brain has its own operating frequency. This means that the transmission of electromagnetic waves don't have to be targeted to a specific region of the brain. This is where the power lines come in. The transmission of a particular frequency over the whole brain will exert an effect relevant to the specific component of the nervous system alone. Therefore, nervous systems having different operating frequencies won't resonate. and therefore will not activate in response to the transmission. What this means is that a child's nervous system has a unique resonance frequency when compared to an adult. Conversely, a male versus a female. What you get is the ability to have multiplex communications come into a home or into an office and deliver independent, unique therapies to children and adults alike, all at the same time. That is what this is saying. The reason why is because you can generate electromagnetic fields into a whole room and it'll only affect mom, and it'll only affect dad and or a child. And what you can do with that is start generating all kinds of domestic conflict if you're able to divide a house against itself. And this is the strategy of the global paradigm with which we are faced. From the nuclear family out to the global community, this is what is happening, in my opinion, for your entertainment purposes only. Listen to this. Various modifications, however, will remain apparent to those skilled in the art, which means that what they're describing here is simply an example. This is where software and products like Apple come into play. To provide a device and method for stimulating the brain or different nervous systems of a subject by means of the resonance effect, going back to Ms. Rauscher, which we'll get back to, the patent we were reviewing earlier a few shows ago. Resonance effect between the frequency of a magnetic field directed to a subject and the natural brainwave frequency of the brain or the nervous system. Anyway, characteristic frequencies of electrical impulses traveling in the brain and through neural networks and chemical pulses across the synapses, because we are electrochemical. The brain functions in electricity and chemicals. One impacts the other. This is why it's being addressed. The electricity happens almost instantaneously in the millisecond, microsecond range. Chemicals take a little longer to diffuse and take a little longer to reset. That's why these things interchange uniquely, which is why they're addressed independently in this language. What they're getting at here is that they can use resonant frequencies at the chemical synapse resonance and at the electrical resonance of the brain. And understanding those, you can start modulating chemical activity in the brain, which is dealing with enzymes and all that other stuff. And that is getting into being able to start flipping epigenetic switches. Now, when you load every single human on the planet with the same genetic code, you're able to then start flipping epigenetic switches with the top-down Godhead-style Chinese model AI system that we have been alleging or alluding to, pontificating on, and postulating for your entertainment purposes only. And this is why China is threatening the United States, saying that if they blame China for COVID being a bioweapon, this is really why. Because really what's happening, in my view, for your entertainment purposes only, and I know we have to edit this, is electrogenic proteins. Electrogenic proteins have been deployed in mass so that these epigenetic switches with these technologies can be used on demand, and the human species will be commoditized. Modern economic and espionage, be it government or corporate, will now include tools of the trade that allow people with the right keys to selectively interface with whoever, however they want. Let's move on. The regeneration of nerve fibers, and I think we'll be out of time. This patent talks about being able to target nerve fibers, damaged or otherwise, and enhance them. And what this gets at is the specific science behind growing and refashioning the physical architecture of the brain and the nervous system. So going back to the super soldier, if you can modulate the brain and overgrow specific nerves, you can start doing things like creating super fast reflexes and creating things like better vision and better senses of smell, greater flexibility, all of it. This is what this patent talks about. I'm going to drop share, and we have 5 minutes. I don't know if you're around. I guess not. So going back to share, we will browse. Let's go back to China super soldiers. Let's look at China super soldiers. Let's look at the New York Post. This will be a watered down version. December 19th of 2020. China developing biologically enhanced super soldiers. France has joined the fray, creating Terminator troops that can be bred to kill. I wonder why France is having so many issues. Last week, France gave the go-ahead for the augmented soldiers. This was back in December of 2019. And some fear that super troopers could be the new norm in the recent future. Now, this gives one wonder as to the aggressive behavior of those police and other COVID officials in Australia. Contact tracers. The French seek to improve physically and cognitively and perceptively and psychologically enhanced capabilities. This could allow for location tracking or connectivity with weapon systems and other soldiers. Among the ministry's research were drugs to keep troops awake for long periods of time and to combat stress, and even surgery to improve hearing. The new species of augmented soldiers, dubbed Homo robocopus, that's rich, could also have altered DNA to give them enhanced speed and strength, as well as robotics. Michael Clark, visiting professors in war studies at King's College London, told The Sun participating could be using DNA as a farmer would in a herd of cattle. This guy is a professor who is at a war studies college in London, stating that DNA is being used as a farmer would use it in a herd of cattle. I am reading from quotes. We've reached the point now where we could potentially manipulate people's DNA to breed into them extra strength, endurance, and other things, just as we do with animals. Just as we've done with standard cattle to give them more back. We can do that now very precisely with humans. Clark, War College professor, added that the bio race is being fueled internationally due to fears of China's program. What they're all thinking about is what might come up in 30 years' time, given another 10 years development and experimentation. Now, this is the watered down version. We are in the middle of that decision right now for your entertainment purposes only. The Chinese in 30 years' time might have a cohort of people who are 20 years old, who've got a particular characteristics they might have tried to breed into them by manipulating DNA. Due to DNA manipulation, future soldiers could also be immune to disease. That is what DARPA's PREPARE program is and what the Harvard Wyss Institute is looking at. DARPA PREPARE. So, a recent report by the International Society for Military Ethics in Europe, obtained by The Sun, reveals a dystopic arena of full bionic men capable of fighting all the time. Enhanced soldiers would be reduced to bionic men who run fast, do not need sleep, eat and drink very little, and can fight all the time. A new species is born, dubbed Homo robocopus. Sir Lawrence Friedman, professor of war studies at the same college, told The Sun, robotics are of more importance. There are people going back into combat in ways they wouldn't have been able to before because prosthetics have been improved. You can use Google glasses. There's lots of things you can now do with a modern soldier that makes them much more effective than they were in the past. If you want people to act just according to orders, going into greater danger, The other trend you can see that is pretty active at the moment is drones, autonomous vehicles, and so on. Let's recap real quick. This is basically stating in a roundabout way, written poorly, is that people act just according to orders, going into greater danger, meaning that they want to genetically modify people to function in this other trend that you can see. It's pretty active at the moment, which is drones, autonomous vehicles, and people. While France claims it will abide by humanitarian law, hashtag war crimes, and Nuremberg, French armed forces Minister Florence Parly warned, we have to be clear. Not everyone has the same scruples as us. And we have to prepare because we have the moral high ground. We have to prepare ourselves for such a future. It's for your own good. Tuck up and sit back in your home. Here is some of the tech in progress to create Homo robo corpus, according to the Sun. Brain microchips, bionic eyes, super hearing, health implants. DARPA's Pentagon research arm is developing cyborg implants to monitor combat efficiency. We have gone over this in previous shows. Enhanced limbs. We will go over this in future shows. Exoskeleton legs, synthetic blood. We will go over this in future shows when we start looking at organ on chips and the immunity to pain. What does torture look like in the modern knowledge home? And with that, folks, I will drop share.
TMC, thanks a lot. You said so many things more eloquently, better, and more powerfully than I might have been able to, all in that span of time. Absolutely fantastic. It's been a really active chat here tonight, and I think you guys have the idea of where we need to concentrate our energies and our attention and our learning, our background. And whatever you have to do it, follow some of the links that we put underneath these shows in our notes. Go back and look at some back episodes at your leisure. Tell your friends, spread it around, and we'll be back with you. We will be here, you be here, and let's all help ourselves survive the coming unpredictable times of the future. You get the idea. TMC, thanks. Last words for you, and we'll conclude and see you next week.
Got nothing but love for you, brother. I'll see you next week.
All right. Night, everybody.